Finding Fins Fishing Podcast is brought to you by OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. Here's what's coming up on today's show.
The reality that this season is lost, I think is starting to settle in with most outfitters. 25% of our outfitters that may never open again. We got a $80 million loss in revenue already. 2,500 jobs already on the block.
We actually replaced our whole fleet of outboard motors, 8 brand new outboards sitting up there, and just continually trying to upgrade. So you got her, Ron.
Broadcasting from the Tazin Lake Lodge studios, this is the Finding Fins Fishing Podcast. How much direction are you getting from the governor?
It generates something like $2.4 billion.
I don't know, maybe you didn't want me to tell the story on the show, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
I knew you were going to go there.
Walleyes relating to deep mud where there's schools of bait fish.
Today's show is brought to you by Haybale Heights on Devil's Lake. Visit haybaleheights.com for more. By Tazin Lake Lodge in northwest Saskatchewan. For trophy lake trout and northern pike, go to tazinlake.com. And by Lake of the Woods Tourism. Plan your trip to Lake of the Woods at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Welcome to the show. I'm Bret Amundson, and like many of you this time of year, normally my social media posts would be flooded with giant fish pictures from Canadian lodges. You'd also see a lot of pictures and videos from my time on a lake that is quickly becoming one of my favorite places in the world, Tazin Lake, in the northwest corner of Saskatchewan. But, of course, this is 2020, and we're all spending more time fishing near home while sharing old memories on Facebook. Hopefully you and your family and friends are also safe and healthy and continue to be. But there is more safety and health to think about aside from the coronavirus. With no end of the Canadian border closure in sight, hunting and fishing outfitters north of the border are in a bit of a crisis mode. Some fishing lodges chose not to open at all this summer. A few waited it out to see if things would change. Others tried to market to Canadians, but most, like a lot of small businesses here in America, have struggled with no real clear instructions on what to do, with no fault to anyone. It was a very stressful summer for many business owners. While lodges in America rode a bit of a roller coaster from mandatory closures and then cancellations, and then they had small openings where you could guide 2 people in a boat. Then all of a sudden it was fully open with COVID precautions. That opening has been a boon to some, as many Americans who normally go to Canadian lodges found themselves making alternative plans to visit lakes and resorts here in the States. While overall tourism is still down in both countries, the Canadian lodges are feeling the financial pain this summer when it comes to outdoor recreation. What does it mean to be a Canadian lodge owner right now, and what might the future look like? Well, we're going to welcome 2 lodge owners, Trevor Montgomery and Barry Prawl from Tazin Lake Lodge, and then Barry also owns Trails End Outfitters on Tobin Lake. We also have Roy Anderson, current CEO of the Saskatchewan Commission of Professional Outfitters and former president of Tourism Saskatchewan, and also Ron Bonneau, owner of Alumarine Boats and True North Yamaha RV and Marine in Prince Albert. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show.
Morning, Brett.
So, Roy, let's start with you. You've been around the tourism industry and the outfitters for a number of years. You were with Tourism Saskatchewan during an interesting time from 2000 to 2006, which I was reading some articles that was dubbed the perfect storm because of SARS and also 9/11. They were some of the most difficult years of the tourism industry in Canada and the world until now. Did you ever expect to see a worse situation than what you went through then?
I didn't think we'd have it to this magnitude. Completely different factors influencing and impacting the industry. We were able to, I wouldn't say we danced our way around the impact back in that period, in 2000, 2006 that I was there, but we were able to manage. I mean, we still had a certain amount of traffic and international traffic that we're able to welcome to the province. Of course, the scenario we're dealing with right now is completely different and far more impactful, I believe, as the gentleman on the call here would nod as well. It's having a drastic effect on some of the key sectors of tourism, but most specifically the outfitting sector. Definitely.
Just briefly, go back to that time and explain what it was like to navigate the tourism industry through those situations.
I think back in from 2000, 2006, those situations there, Saskatchewan has a strong dependence on national domestic traffic, and the tourism revenues are from those markets represent the majority of our our industry overall. And we have what I have always called the sort of random acts of tourism, where people come through our provinces for different reasons, whether it's to visit families and friends or pleasure or other events. We don't hear at that time anyways in Saskatchewan, we didn't have a lot of package tourism traffic aside from what the outfitters were doing. You might put meeting and convention as a tourism segment in there. And then you have outfitters, who package their product, they take it to market and they sell it, and it's sold before the person comes to the province. And we still have that scenario here in Saskatchewan, where outfitters represent the majority of that package business. So it would be a little bit different. The dependency on international travel from 2000 to 2006 might have been a bit more heavy for the Banffs and the Montreals and the gateway places in Canada, more than it was in Saskatchewan. So we managed to, as I mentioned, not to sidestep, we lost some international traffic, but I don't believe, maybe the economic impact, you guys might be able to speak to it better than me, the economic impact and uncertainty caused by those events in the States might have affected the outfitting business back then. I would suggest maybe 2008 even had a bigger impact from the 2000-2006 period. But again, as we're here talking about today, nothing at the degree that the ban on non-essential travel at the border has had on outfitters here, definitely.
You're now the CEO of the Saskatchewan Commission of Professional Outfitters. Explain what that group is.
This is an organization. It's a traditional industry association that we set up about, I guess it'd be about 4 years ago. I mean, I had a great relationship with the outfitters back when I was at Tourism Saskatchewan. I'm a management consultant by trade. And generally our job is to, we've got a mix of purposes. One is effective resource management. Of course, the most important one is to maximize the economic benefit to the province through outfitting. That's what we focus the majority of our time on, and work with other stakeholders and groups around that. Again, primarily the Ministry of Environment in the province overall. The sector still represents one of the significant, and of course, from my perspective, the most important tangible sector in the tourism industry here in Saskatchewan. So you'll see the attention that's being paid on it right now because of the reality of the impact of the border closure. It won't impact the other sectors of the tourism business here in Saskatchewan to the degree it does right now. So as an association, of course, we've got a multi-year strategy that has about 22 different initiatives in it, from expanding business opportunities through to revenue generation to member support programs, but everything's been put on hold now as we try to focus on, navigating our way through this challenge. And we've got some good recognition from Tourism Saskatchewan and the provincial government overall as they recognize we're sort of that one slice of the tourism industry that goes from full speed ahead to zero speed ahead. While other sectors in the tourism industry are able to take advantage of what they're calling the pivot strategy nationally, the federal government has focused everything on, let's refocus all our energy to the domestic market. These people that might have traveled to the States or traveled someplace now they've got these disposable dollars to spend. It provides opportunity for some recovery for lots of the tourism industry overall. But as you understand, it doesn't provide any opportunity for the outfitting sector here in Saskatchewan or really across the country. Yeah, some provinces like Quebec have a little bit of opportunity because a lot of their outfitting is for domestic clients, but the balance of the province or the balance of the country is definitely struggling, hit hard.
Yeah, let's look at the outfitting industry in Saskatchewan and how much reliance on the United States, people coming up from the United States, how much reliance is there and how much money do Americans bring into the province to go to these for outdoor recreation, hunting and fishing?
Yeah, really good question, Brett. We have three sectors. So we've got big game, we've got game bird, and we've got angling. And our species are bear, whitetail, moose, game birds, and of course the angling side. So we found out fairly early in the process, we did what we call business disruption surveys of this sector to find out immediately. Our first one we did right back in March. And at that point in time, we had 50% of the camps basically closed or saying they weren't going to open in 2020 at all. Already at that point in the process, a lot of spring bear, guys, you know as well as anybody, you know, angling camps have to make decisions, investment decisions as early as February and March, you know, to get revved up for the season. So if they're remote and they can't see that there's clarity around the fact that they're going to have an opportunity, they're just not going to open. So we did do what we call a bit of a pivot strategy for road accessible fishing camps. We asked we asked the membership and the sector overall, how many you're planning on opening. I isolated those, and then we worked with Tourism Saskatchewan here to do a bit of an in-province campaign to encourage people to go out and support their fishing camps. If they haven't been north, to go north. If they've never fished before, great opportunity to learn how to fish, go with an outfitter. If they've never been north before, great opportunity to go north, go with an outfitter. They can provide a safe, secure, and not only educational, learn how to do it, but a great experience. So I think we had some success with that. I would say we maybe have a third of the fishing camps maybe took advantage of that. I'm speculating on the total number. So we just did the same thing, Brett, to test whether there's an opportunity for a pivot strategy for game bird and big game. And I just wrapped up the findings from that yesterday, and there isn't. We got really strong responses back very quickly from our members and from licensed outfitters to say too risky. No benefit, short term, let's not bother. So there isn't any opportunity there. To get back to, I guess, your initial question, that the outfitting sector here in Saskatchewan, the economic impact represents $130 million net contribution to GDP. So that's net every year here in the province. And I would suggest that comes from, we'll see once we wrap up our business disruption survey, I expect to be close to $220, $250 million in lost sales revenue this year. We're talking about 5,000 jobs related to the outfitting sector.
That was my next question.
And you know, outfitting takes place across the province, but game bird is the only really sector of outfitting that's allowed in the southern part of the province. Everything else happens in the north, as we call the forested area of the province. So, you know, close to 4,000 of those jobs that occur in that northern area through outfitting. And I can't remember what the exact number is, but a very high degree of the investment made by outfitters as well as employment occurs within 100 kilometers of their business. So it's very regional, very community-based impact. So, you know, as Ron's going to say, and across the board, the business loss for outfitters here represents, as I said, $250 million worth of lost sales revenue, $130 million in net GDP. Outfitters are suffering, but the businesses that are dependent on those outfitters are going to suffer significantly too here. Those local community economies that basically provide the services and goods to outfitters.
Well, and not just that, but people that go, like if I go up to Barry's at Tobin and I'm in Nipawin going to the grocery store, you know, or going to the gas station or eating at the restaurants or whatever. Tourism is a lot more than just those lodges and outfitters. And let's talk about those jobs, 5,000 jobs. Some of those are, you know, people from Indigenous communities too. What's happening to those people right now that are losing out on those jobs up there? What are they doing?
It's a really good question. Some of them have been able to access the federal government programs, and some of them have been able to access from the business side some of the provincial programs. So our job as the Saskatchewan Association here, we sit on the Canadian Federation of Outfitters Associations as well, that has you know, our colleagues and representatives from across the country. And our primary focus March, April, and May was to push back, or not push back, but push within the federal program deliveries that were coming down to try and broaden them and provide more accessibility to individuals that are working for outfitters or the outfitters themselves. You know, the program seemed to be designed very well to serve registered businesses and employees or registered employees. So in other words, employees for which outfitters were paying unemployment insurance and the dues that are required, maybe not so much for individuals that are contracted. So I think those working in the industry and working in the, you know, the industries that are wrapped around outfitters, if they were employed and paying UI, they likely did okay. if they were contracted. Some were successful in accessing programs and some haven't been. So
yeah, they finally started something in the States like that for they called it gig workers or independent contractors, where they were able to finally get some assistance as well. So before we move on to the other guys here, I want to ask you, and if you guys want to speak up and add something too, feel free to jump in. You talk about before, at the beginning, about 50% said they probably wouldn't open at all. What did you hear throughout this pandemic from outfitters, and what are you hearing from them now? Are they worried that they'll, are some not going to be able to recover from this, or do you think some will remain closed forever, or what's the status out there? What are you hearing?
I think that's the reality. We'll likely go out again, Bret, here as soon as we hear about the next border extension, which I believe we will, beyond the August 23rd date. As soon as we hear that, we'll go back out and ask that exact question. How many of you are going to be closed permanently? We asked that question back in the last surveys, and we were getting 25, 26% that said there was a very high risk that they would be closed permanently. We'll see how that comes out in the wash, as they say. But as an association, the board of directors and the stakeholders, provincial government, other agencies, the federal agency, we're working to try to get support. Our biggest concern right now is 2021. The reality that this season is lost, I think, is starting to settle in with most outfitters. The accessibility to the programs that are there. We'll likely take another run with 2021 in mind, because you've got a unique situation that, again, these guys can speak to it better than I can, but I'm assuming there's a unique situation here where you have deposit revenues that have been taken for this 2020 season. Some outfitters have used part of that deposit revenue to get set up in anticipation of having a season, and now they're pushing all of those, the majority of those people that they had booked for 2020 into 2021. So you've got capacity challenges and market reputation challenges, and you've got cash flow challenges. So I think that's a key and critical question. That's the one in front of us right now: is how do we help outfitters plan for 2021 to get back to business profitability? So based off of that, then I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that I probably won't be getting up there until 2021, but there are still people here in the States, waterfowl hunters and deer hunters, that are still holding out hope that they might be able to get up there that fall. What do you think the likelihood of that is, and what do you think needs to happen between now and next summer to ensure that we'll even be able to go up there in 2021? Yeah, I think the likelihood, I'm so cautious. Sure. I get asked that question about 3 or 4 times a day by different outfitters, but the only indicator that I'm confident in that gives a good direction on what might happen is the spread, the numbers, basically. What's happening in Canada, what's happening in the States. So when I get that question, I just say, well, look at the numbers and you draw your own conclusion. I think most of the industry experts that we have talked to speculate now. I know our colleagues in BC and Alberta are basically saying to their outfitters, season's done. The border will not open in 2020. So, and for the first time, we passed that information on to our members in the sector in a communication a couple of weeks ago. We are working on, there are protocol plans that the territories were the first one. Yukon was the first one to get their plan approved. Of course, in the Yukon, nobody was allowed in, not even Canadians, up until recently. And the association up there came up with a protocol process and had it endorsed to manage the 14-day quarantine. So they have a process that's been approved to allow a non-resident, in terms of non-Yukon resident, now to come into the Yukon for a hunt, and a process to allow them to go directly over the border, directly to camp, participate in the hunt, and leave. Even if that, from my understanding, even if the term of that hunt is less than 14 days. So they've sort of waived. They haven't waived the requirement for quarantine, but they've allowed a different process. Now that will serve the Canadian market. So now they can open up, and people who want to, if the Yukon can handle the price discounts that come along with that, the expectation from Canadians, they're going to get a bargain. So that has been put in place. So the other jurisdictions will now be taking that and looking about how it might be applied. But it's still, so that'd be pushed forward, I guess, short answer, that'd be pushed forward in an effort to try and get the federal government to consider an alternate process around the 14-day quarantine at the point when the Canadian-U.S. border maybe opens up to the next level of non-essential or essential travel. We figure that the border will open up in waves. At this point, it's these. At the next point, they might allow another slice in, another slice. So we're trying to get outfitting positioned in the first or second slice once it starts to open. So that's where we are right now. We're confident. We remain confident that we're going to get a solution in place before the next year.
Trevor, let's move on to you with Tazin Lake Lodge. When did you come to the realization that your season may not happen at Tazin Lake Lodge?
Well, we held out until June 21st. Until July 21st, when they finally announced that the border extension would go on. We had hoped that maybe we could salvage some of the season and maybe run a little bit later into the season. But with that further extension for the border, it was time to make some hard decisions, and that's when Barry and I decided it was time to decide to close for the season and then regroup and go towards 2021.
Listeners of this show have probably heard me and you guys talk about Tazin Lake Lodge quite a bit, but for new viewers / listeners, explain what Tazin Lake Lodge is all about.
We're a fly-in fishing outfitter in northwest Saskatchewan, right on the Northwest Territory Saskatchewan border. We're north of Lake Athabasca in Saskatchewan. We run an American plan lodge, and myself and my partner Barry Prawl have been in the outfitting industry for most of our working lives, and so we feel that we try and anticipate what people want and how it's going to work, and go from there.
How much of your business is from the United States?
The majority of our business is from the United States, over 90%.
So when all this happened, did you have any inclination that you wouldn't have a season this year?
Well, we didn't. I guess in the very beginning, when the COVID shutdown came down, everybody I think was on the same page. Oh yeah, a little road bump, a little speed bump here, and things will get back to normal. But as time progressed, it slowly became apparent that there was a good chance that, especially after that July period of 21st, that there was a good chance that we weren't going to open.
What did you do with the clients that you had booked?
We've been trying to keep everybody in the loop there. Basically what we did was we just basically forwarded them or rolled them over, I guess, to 2021 once we realized that we weren't going to open, and just tried to, I guess, maintain in contact as much as possible, discussions. We have just tried to, I guess, reassure everybody that, we're here for the long haul. We're not going anywhere. This is a speed bump, that's for sure, but it's not a game changer or a game ender for us. So, yeah.
What about deposits? I'm sure some people probably thought they could get a refund on their deposits. I know I heard that from people all over the place, even down here in the United States. Of course, everybody's asking for their deposits. I think most outfitters roll people into the next year. Those deposits went to go to getting the camp ready for clients this year, don't they?
Absolutely. Well, and kind of like Roy alluded to, that a lot of that prep work happens in the wintertime, with frozen ground, access to certain areas. So we do a winter haul every year up to Uranium City, because Uranium City is just on the other side of the mountain range from us. So we haul up there, and, it's 20 miles away by air. So we haul up there and stockpile. And that's what we did, of course, this year in February, is we hauled up. We actually replaced our whole fleet of outboard motors, 8 brand new outboards sitting up there, and, continually
Trevor.
trying to upgrade. So you got her on, but trying to upgrade and move things forward. And then, of course, our dried goods and, all of our heavy stuff. So, of course, there's a lot of capital that goes in to prep for that season. And so basically with deposits, we rolled them over to 2021 and agree on dates. One of the challenges we have found so far is that we had planned to change our season from a 7-day trip to a 5-day trip in 2021. And so that has, everybody we've talked to really hasn't had any issues with it because they realize that, for growth of the outfitter and how things are going to work most effectively, that's a decision, a business decision. Sometimes it has to be made, especially because it was made prior to. So we are moving forward with that 2 5 and 10-day trips next year.
With changes that come with a growing camp like that, and then you throw something like this and you take a whole season off, and we talk about what's happening with these 5,000 employees across the province. Are you worried about staffing, with having this year off, about losing any of the guides and some of the camp staff that you'd have for next season?
And what we've done, same thing, has been in constant communication with them. We have some key people who have been a part of our team for a number of years now, and those are our key people, and they all understand and they love the camp as much as we do, and that's why they come back every year. We did have a number of newer staff that we had lined up because, of course, it was plagued to be a stellar season this year. So, but they all, same thing. They're all keep my name down for next year. A lot of them really want to come, and I believe that it should actually be easier to access staff next year, especially if there are some outfitters. There's less people, maybe less outfitters running, a number of things like that may open up a door to more staff too as well.
Man, I'll tell you what. Obviously I'm work with you guys quite a bit, and I know we were all just pumped about this year because we've just seen that camp grow and grow and grow every year, and this year was poised to really be a great year up there. And just to have, my gosh, just train right off the tracks for everybody everywhere right now, and it just I don't even know. Just trying to find positives in the situation are just tough right now. So it's obviously very difficult to be a lodge owner right now in Canada. What about being a boat dealer, Ron? I want to talk to you about how this you're in a little bit of a different situation, but obviously very closely related to everything that we're talking about. How has the border closure and the COVID situation affected your business?
I guess from a boat dealer standpoint, Bret, it's actually been very good. Retail sales on marine products, quads, snowmobiles, that type of thing has just been going through the roof. From a manufacturer's standpoint, not so much. Obviously, Alumarine Boats are 75 to 80% of our business is camps and lodges. However, we did see a big increase in our retail sales through our dealer network, of course. But that, I think it's a bit of a psychological thing. People are saying, "The hell with this COVID. I'm spending some money. I'm going to treat myself." And so they're doing that. But from a manufacturer standpoint, definitely we felt the pinch. We were lucky. We didn't lay anybody off. We didn't shut down. We had enough orders to keep us going, especially with the increase in the retail sales. But we're going to see the pinch here coming up soon. Without the border opening, all the indications that I've seen is we're talking mid to late winter before that even opens up. So if that happens, obviously the lodges, the camps aren't buying boats. They're not buying engines because they have no revenue coming in. So that's where we're going to see the pinch, I think, is a little further down the road. We're at the point where we're caught up with our orders, and it's just now we're staying. We're still manufacturing, but it's mostly inventory. So we've caught up.
We saw a big increase in fishing participation here in Minnesota this year, to the point where you try to go to a tackle shop and the shelves are empty because more people are going out. The demand was so much higher, and then the supply chain obviously was disrupted because any American-made product, people weren't going to work, so manufacturing pretty much came to a halt, and anything imported obviously wasn't happening either. So in Canada, did you have And then not only that, not only were people not working, but we were pumping extra money. We had a stimulus check, and then we had some additional unemployment benefits for people out of work. Did you experience similar situations in Canada, or did everybody kind of keep working, or what happened up there? And
I think that we probably saw there were some people laid off, but a lot of people working from home. I don't think in Prince Albert per se that we saw a lot of layoffs. I think most people were working from home, so I think the revenues were still there. And then with the CERB and the other federal aids, I guess I could say, there was still money out there. This is the best year we've had in 5-6 years. It was really down, and I think it's just a psychological thing. You know, we may have to go to the layoff thing. I'm hoping we don't have to. Our business is, or our manufacturing process is very, very technical, and it takes a long time to train people to build a boat. It's not something you can just pick up in a couple of weeks. You're talking years. Our head guy's been building boats for 40 years, and the other guy's been doing it for 37 years. So it's not something that you can just train a guy in a couple of weeks and let him go. So
you were able to just keep manufacturing and selling all your products throughout this whole situation.
Yeah, we going into this year, we were expecting, like Trevor said, we were expecting a banner year. We were looking at probably upwards of 300 to 350 boats, which is doesn't sound like a lot to a Lund or a Smoker Craft or any of the big companies, but to us that's huge. And if you think about our market, it's northern Saskatchewan, the territories, northern Manitoba, northern Ontario at this point. So it's a lot of boats, and I was concerned that we wouldn't be able to fill the orders. And then, of course, we had some cancellations. Some of the lodges had canceled with the dealers, and that was expected. It wasn't a big deal. And we were able to keep going just because of the increase in our retail, though.
Oh,
it wasn't, the wholesale. And then we did do what I called my my COVID stimulus package. So I offered extra discounts to the dealers if they ordered boats, but those are gone now. And it did help a little bit, and it got the dealers once Saskatchewan opened, with the announcement of stage 1, everything just went crazy, because out in Manitoba did it about the same time, and then Ontario shortly after. That really stimulated orders for us.
Now, with your type of business, had you been running into issues, would there have been some sort of government assistance program for your type of business?
Basically, the only assistance that we may have qualified for is if we were affected by COVID at the plant. So in other words, if we had to shut the plant down. But other than that, there was very little that we would qualify for. Basically, one reason was that we were a new company in the sense. I mean, Alumarine's been around since 1967, but in Prince Albert just since 2019. We started building boats in March of 2019. So there was not a lot of I guess, paperwork or income difference to show the federal government to get any help. I'm not a big fan of getting that help anyway.
Sure.
Because nothing's free, right? So, I guess our biggest thing is just try to keep going, try to work with our dealers. That was key. We didn't pressure them in any way. Some of them canceled some orders. So be it. That was fine. We just have to look forward to the future in the next 5 or 10 or 20 years.
So, Trevor, what would you what's been available for outfitters, or what would you like to see as far as if there's any way the government can help out outfitters there?
Well, there is a couple of programs that have been available from one from the provincial government for outfitters, up to a couple grants depending on how much income you lost, up to a maximum of $5,000 a crack, and they've had 2 rollouts of it, so I believe it's up to $10,000. And then there's also a small business emergency loan of $40,000 with if the 30's paid back in a preset time frame, that $10,000 becomes a grant. And that's kind of what has been there. I know that tourism potentially has some things coming out too as well, and I believe that out of the whole tourism industry, outfitters are probably the ones that have been hit the hardest out of this, just because of, like you were talking with Barry, just before he cut out, no deer season, no bear season. It's going to be huge for him with zero income for the year, and then of course Tazin being shut down at the same time. So those possibilities of that grant or aid from the government. And I believe that if things continue on this road, they're just going to keep on bringing out or changing the scope of the programs maybe, but continuing to keep people so that, they can climb and not sink to the bottom and crash. So.
And that's similar to what's happened here too. We had a small business loan opportunity where it could be if you didn't change your payroll, the loan would be forgiven. So essentially they give you the money if you didn't get rid of anybody. And then, but it was a 2.5 month loan originally. And then you were supposed to file for this forgiveness of the loan. Well, then they won't even let you file for it right now, because it just keeps changing. Like, well, hang on, we're going to extend it. It just keeps changing. And nobody really knows what the end is going to look like. Mm-hmm. Roy, what do you think the future is going to look like? And when it comes to these outfitters, I know assistance. Not everybody wants assistance, but when you talk about zero income for a business, yet those businesses have bills that still need to be paid. Is there in some place in the States, some rent is being, you can't be evicted, or some rent is being forgiven or whatever. What do you think is going to happen with these outfitters when it comes to even paying bills?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, what we've been trying to do at the national level anyways, is to try and work within those programs and sort of push the parameters so that more outfitters would be eligible. The low interest loan piece, for example, when it first came out, you had to have a certain degree of payroll. Well, lots of our outfitters don't basically have a registered payroll, so we fought against trying to get that removed. We couldn't understand why it needed to be there. I guess they were using that to define whether the business was registered or not, but there's other ways to do that. So we were able to get that pushed down from 50 to 20, and I think since then it's been pushed down a little bit further. So when we originally looked at how many of our members had subscribed to that loan program, it wasn't that many, And as Trevor mentioned, outfitters are independent, they're resilient, they really don't like handouts. They like to be standing on their own. So you got to respect that and appreciate that. But I think as we move towards 2021, there may not be as much of a choice from a cash flow perspective. The commercial rents and leases and those programs are all out there for all sectors to access as needed, including the outfitters. What we haven't been able to do, and we continue to push on at the national level, is to try and raise the understanding that outfitters are totally unique, especially here in Saskatchewan. They are dependent on the American market pretty well solely, other than maybe a certain percentage of road accessible fishing camps. They have Saskatchewan and Alberta residents that maybe access those, but really if you're packaging up and you're selling outfitted experiences, they're going to the States. So even within all of the business sectors overall, then you break it down just to the tourism sector, and then the slice within the tourism sector, outfitters really do stand on their own here in Saskatchewan and being entirely dependent on that U.S. market. So I think we haven't had as much luck at the national level trying to get that understanding drilled into the or accepted by the leaders at the federal level. So we'll likely be here in as we move forward into the fall. We clearly have, I think, I'm comfortable at the provincial level. The premier of the province, the ministers here in the province, they know, understand, recognize, and are aware of the value of the tourism industry, because we had numbers in front of them, like I said, by the middle of the March, saying we got 25% of our outfitters that may never open again. We got a $80 million loss in revenue already, 2,500 jobs already on the block. We were, basically with engagement of the members. They had their data back to us within 3 days. We were able to package up and get it to the ministers. So I'm comfortable that understanding is there. And as we move into 2021, as we get into the fall here and winter seasons, I think that's where we're going to have to look to really identify first, what do outfitters really need? We don't want to roll out a program that is unsubscribed. So tell us where the pain points are. What's the cash flow position, so we can identify what sort of I'll be honest with you, Bret, I don't ever see a bailout for the outfitting sector. Nobody's going to cut a check to cover the sales and profit losses of the outfitting sector on its own. Other sectors are hurting. So I think if there's anything we might have the opportunity to do, it's going to be looking for some sort of, again, a low interest loan program or cash flow program to help those that need to basically backfill that deposit revenue that they're not going to have going into 2021. The federal employment subsidy program, that's been extended late into the fall. So businesses that have registered employees and have been able to retain some of them or bring some of them back, they're getting 75% of those wages subsidized by the federal government. Again, that doesn't provide opportunities to everybody, but it does help some, and those are going to be extended later into the year. So the people that are hanging on to their employees and doing renovations at their camps or sales and marketing efforts go towards 2021, they've been able to access those programs. So it's going to be a mix of a few things, but summary, liquidity, having dollars that are accessible to underwrite 2021 is likely going to be the biggest challenge here in the next 3 months.
Well, I keep encouraging people to book a trip for 2021 and send those deposits up there. And, for people that can do that, it might maybe help some people get through this summer and get a trip on the books for next year. And gosh, guys, I wish you all the best. And of course, I love it up there, and really disappointed that I wasn't able to make it up there. And obviously, we're in uncertain times, and nobody really knows what the future looks like. But I hope to be up there as soon as I think the day the border opens, I'm just going to be waiting at customs, waiting to go across the border as soon as they announce it's going to open. And I'm afraid to even ask you guys how the fishing has been this year. I know I've talked to Trevor a little bit about it. And Ron, I saw you guys got out and got some pretty well, we'll talk about Tazin too, but you guys went and got some rainbows one day. Those are some pretty chunky fish.
There was an excellent guide and not a bad guy on the rod.
Are you still mad that I caught him all that day? Or
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was an excellent guide, buddy. I do thank you. That's one of the best. That is the best day of rainbow fishing I've ever had. So I can't wait to go out again with you. That's for sure.
Great.
Some of those fish were just chunky. Like we stock most of our rainbows down here, and so you just don't see them that unless you're going after steelhead up on Superior. You just don't see them that big down here. But and then Ron, you got up to Tazin. That was your first time up at Tazin Lake Lodge?
That was my first time. Yeah, it was a fantastic trip. Got my personal best lake trout there first night.
That happens.
Wasn't expecting the midnight fishing, but but I loved it. Getting Trevor out of bed in the morning was kind of a chore.
Well, most guys that know me know that I kind of run a little different routine than everybody else, especially on my time, eh?
You go to a different beat, buddy.
I'll tell you what. Obviously, it's not a normal thing to be fishing overnight up there, but we've done that before. And when it stays that light that late, it's just kind of a neat adventure to do that. I think Trevor, we fished from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. one day last year, I think.
Yeah, I think more than one day, maybe. And the years before that, definitely many days. But we were just looking at some different options, try to see, different ideas. We had some ideas. We wanted to do a few dry runs and see what, how it would work. So,
Well,
and maybe we'll roll them out.
So from
We
8,
pulled an all-nighter one night.
yeah, I mean,
We got in at 7. Yeah.
I think that's it's pretty neat. I know when we did it, I only needed a headlamp for about a half hour out of that entire span overnight, which when you talk to us guys down here in the States and you think about wearing sunglasses at 1 o'clock in the morning, they just look at you funny. It doesn't really happen down here. But was it hard for you to leave, Ron?
Absolutely. Especially knowing that I couldn't go back up right away. It was it was a blast, and it was country that I'd never seen before. I'd been to Athabasca, but as soon as you cross that northern edge of Athabasca, the whole terrain changes again. And so I got a good look at that, and then we flew out to Nettle, and that was a nice trip to get to see a little more country from the air. And I'd love to be back there.
I was jealous about that. And when you talk to people, obviously you guys have probably known this for a long, long time, but when I talk to people down here about Saskatchewan, when I talk to people that have been across some of Western Canada, and it's just flat and boring up in that Saskatchewan, which I like the prairie, so flat and boring is fine with me. And I wouldn't use the term boring when you talk about the prairie, but when you get to northern Saskatchewan, it's a completely different landscape up there.
That's right. It's fantastic. It's almost mountainous.
Yeah.
You could almost call it mountainous, and it's I just totally enjoyed that.
That's a neat flight coming over from Athabasca into Tazin.
Yeah, it's unique. It's like nowhere else in the province. And actually, I seen an old map on a Uranium City page there from the Hudson's Bay Company, and that is apparently an ancient mountain range on both sides. It's 2 separate mountain ranges. The Black Bear Mountains and the Caribou Mountains is what they have east and south of Tazin. And it's actually just turned into, it was a special management zone prior to, but this past winter, they're turning it into a permanent refuge now. So no future development is allowed to happen in the area, which is great because I've got it all over the province, especially the north half of all my career, and there is nowhere in the province like it. It is so unique, for hills and sizes. Tazin sits 550 feet in elevation higher than Lake Athabasca in 20 miles. Unreal.
Yeah, well, and you talk about the depths of that lake. It's not surprising. I mean, I suppose the majority of that mountain range is underwater now, probably just because of when you got some areas that are 700 to 800 or supposedly 900 feet deep. In that spot there. It's quite amazing, and the history of the blowing the tunnel through the rock and redirecting the current. There's so much history just in the northern half of that province in general. Just so much history. Such a neat area. And Roy, we'll have to get you up to Tazin one of these days.
That sounds very good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. Well, I wish you the best up there. If there's anything, would anybody else like to say? Is there anything else you guys wanted to get out? Any messages or anything that you'd like to say?
Just everybody keep their chins up. It's all going to get better.
Yeah,
we'll get it figured out. We're looking forward to having everybody up here in 2020.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Can't wait. All right, gentlemen, I appreciate the time here on the radio show. Good luck with everything up there in Saskatchewan.
Thanks a lot, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Brett. Take care, buddy.
This has been the Finding Fins Fishing Podcast, part of the Sporting Journal Radio family. Find us online at findingfins.com and make sure to check out our sponsors. They're pretty cool. Devil's Lake is legendary, and this summer has been legendary for walleyes. Don't miss out. Call Haybale Heights Campground and Resort today to book one of their modern cabins on East Bay. The cabins are furnished with a full bathroom, kitchen, and all the amenities like high-speed internet and are clean following CDC guidelines. Staying at Haybale Heights gives you full access to a private boat launch, fish cleaning station, and beach area. Learn more at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com. Plan your trip to legendary Devil's Lake today. As we all navigate through the tough times of 2020, finding new ways to enjoy summer has become a way of life. If you're searching for the perfect getaway this summer, look no further than the walleye capital of the world, Lake of the Woods. Fish the Rainy River, Big Traverse Bay, and don't forget you can still experience the uniqueness of the Northwest Angle. For your best chance to catch big fish, go where the big fish are. Lake of the Woods. Plan your trip at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. If trophy lake trout and monster northern pike are on your list this summer, book a trip to Tazin Lake Lodge in northwestern Saskatchewan.
Everything from numbers to big fish.
See pictures, videos, and more at TazinLake.com.
This is quite the fishery.
Our 5-star chef will feed you well after a day of chasing giants on Tazin Lake.
Dream come true.
Get rates, dates, and more of what you can expect
It could be the best fishing you've ever had in your life.
at TazinLake.com. That's TazinLake.com. Tazin Lake Lodge is a proud partner of Tourism Saskatchewan. Hunt, fish, conserve, repeat. That's the mission here at Sporting Journal Radio, and if you love the outdoors as much as we do, show it off with new wildlife-themed gear from the Sporting Journal Radio store. From hoodies to hats, coffee mugs, wildlife prints, and you can even make your phone stand out with a new case sporting some high-quality wildlife photography. Go to sportingjournalradio.com and click on Store. We have a huge selection of gear with new items being added every week. Powered by Shopify, which is trusted by over 1 million businesses and offering a variety of ways to pay, including PayPal. Shop now at sportingjournalradio.com.